We have talked quite a bit about the nonprofit sector and the private sector, but we have representatives here from business, education, philanthropy, communities, Mayor, and the nonprofits. And we really want to take a deeper dive here on all of this. And Joe, I want to start with you. You are the CEO of 7-Eleven. You certainly have been hiring veterans. You know the value of veterans. But I want you to talk about the challenges you might have had in hiring those veterans. There are fantastic success stories, and we've heard it, and you've had fantastic success stories. But what about integrating those in your work, with those people in your workforce, the veterans in your workforce?
Okay, so the challenges. First and foremost, I agree with everything that was said earlier, particularly the gentleman from Disney. I think we all got to take a look, and I know we all appreciate the military and what the men and women in the military do for us, but we all need to take a look at how we're impacting that. I have the opportunity in my role to set a tone for the organization. And the tone for us is that we will hire military because we appreciate what the military has done. We've got a lot of recognition from that, from GI Jobs Magazine to
Where does that come from, by the way? How does
it comes from me, but we've got many folks throughout our system that believe in that. And so the challenges that we have, we're bringing folks in not only into the corporate side of our business. I think about 5.25% of our employees are military. But we're now bringing them into the franchise side because what we're recognizing is that military veterans have a real entrepreneurial spirit. The challenge in that side is financing. We currently offer a 10% discount to military folks. We're looking to go to 20%. And we offer about 75%, up to 75%, to join 7-Eleven as an owner-operator. But we can't get financing. They can't get financing. They don't have the dollars to make up that 25%. And so that, to me, is the biggest obstacle. We have all talked about the values, the leadership, the can-do attitude, the mission orientation they bring. It really comes down to, in our business, dollars.
Jean Case, you are CEO of the Case Foundation, philanthropist. What worries me when I look around at the atmosphere in the country, war-weary, a little bit tired of hearing about veterans, how do you keep this up with the waning public interest? Because it's something we all have to admit, there is waning public interest, and I fear by the end of this year it's going to get even worse.
So I'm glad you asked that question, and for those of you that don't know the Case Foundation, we like to say that we invest in people and ideas that can change the world. And we're a little bit different than a lot of foundations because we're literally 6 blocks from the White House. And you know, sometimes where you sit determines a lot about the role you're going to play. And literally in this case, we've just found it to be a tremendous benefit to have the opportunity to lead public-private sector initiatives. So your question is one of, you know, is there pessimism out there? Is there an opportunity? And as I sat here this morning and listened to this remarkable group of folks and then moved around during conversation time, I'm super optimistic because I actually think the private sector hasn't been fully tapped for what the private sector is really good at. You know, if you want a marketing campaign, if you want to get in the ether of pop culture, if you want to use technology to help drive a solution, you're usually not looking to government to do that. And while there have been remarkable leadership efforts already to take these issues forward, there really hasn't yet been a clarion call. And when Ken Fisher talked about people raising their right hand, I'm a believer that my colleagues in philanthropy, my colleagues in business, my fellow citizens want to help. What's really honestly been lacking is a clarion call and clear on-ramps. Where do I get started? I mean, this should be the most inside the tent, inside baseball group we have around this issue. And still we heard questions even from this audience about where do I get started. So I'm optimistic because I think 2.5 million is a very solvable number. We had the benefit of building a little company called America Online, and when we got started, only 3% of the people were online at all, and they were online an hour a week. If you fast forward the tape, it wasn't long before society had changed. And we're just big believers in the power to leverage the private sector to do really big things. We've seen this happen in other things the nation should care about, where we've seen literally billions of dollars and millions of people to come out and be part of it. And you know, the president talked this morning about the goal of this center here, not really just being dialogue and ideas, but taking those ideas to action. And I guess I'm encouraged by the fact that, you know, I don't really believe it's been fully taken to action yet, and I'm looking forward to what might come out of a day like today.
And one of the things you have done, Mayor Alvin Brown, is really focus Jacksonville, Florida, on this issue. You have the largest municipal population of veterans in Florida, so there's a good reason you're doing that. But how have you really involved your community, your city?
Sure. I think, first of all, as mayor of the city of Jacksonville, I think once you serve your country with distinction, you should be able to get out and get a job and take care of your family. You know, I'm very humbled by our military population. My 2 boys and my wife get to enjoy our freedom every day for the men and women who served and who have served. So I thank God for that. In Jacksonville, I made it a top priority, not only because we have a large presence, but it has a $14.1 billion economic impact on our city. I made it a top priority by first appointing an admiral, Admiral Vic Guillory, a 2-star recent retired admiral, made it a cabinet position. He reports directly to the mayor. And Admiral, stand up. I want everybody to see Admiral Guillory right there. Raise your hand. Stand up. Thank you. Let's thank you. So that's the first thing that I did, invest in the infrastructure. So I have a full team of people, and they're veterans. Not only as Director of Military Affairs, my Director of Public Work is a veteran, my Director of Federal Affairs is a veteran, my Director of State Affairs is a veteran, so I brought them on. I think that, so it starts from the top. Secondly, I made sure that we forged this public-private partnership, and I launched a partnership with the Jacksonville Military Coalition, and my goal was to put veterans back to work, those who were seeking jobs. So I partnered, and a young man who heads that up is Mike Fleming with Deutsche Bank, who's a veteran. When I came in office, we had 0 companies partnering with the city. Today, we have over 200 companies working with the city, putting veterans back to work. I think the private sector is the engine of our community, and I think there are some great opportunities that you can really leverage to get a return on investment for your community. The other thing is I launched what I call a week of valor, honoring the veterans not just on Veterans Day, but having a job fair for veterans. You can't show up to the job fair not unless you have a job for veterans. I think is important. Having activities during that week was also important. And then an annual summit on national issues and local issues, particularly local issues as it relates to veterans and the concerns of the military and veterans in my city. So for example, last year it was on suicide prevention. We worked with the local colleges and universities, bringing all the stakeholders together to address that issue. I brought all the CEOs together who run the hospitals like Mayo and Baptist, St. Vincent's and Shands to deal with those issues and come up with best practices to make sure.
So your community is not only involved with veterans, they see veterans working and that it is successful.
Absolutely. It's a top priority. Mayor. Pardon me?
It's an advantage of being mayor. You can bring attention to whatever you want. Jake Wood, he was the co-founder and CEO of Team Rubicon, and you can read about that in your program, but Team Rubicon is just a terrific organization that helps with disaster relief, a group of veterans. I've met several of them in Afghanistan who are just incredible people. Welcome, Jake. When you hear this and you hear trying to focus on veterans and you don't, Jean Case says she sees this as an opportunity, that there's not really waning interest. Are you seeing the same thing?
Well, certainly I think most of my colleagues in the space fear kind of the 2018, 2019 time frame, the next 5 years post the Afghanistan withdrawal and what that's going to mean for funding. I think that the cream of the crop, and we've all heard the number 46,000 thrown around today as the number of organizations, nonprofit organizations with some charge in their mission to help veterans come home. I think that the best in class right now are trying to figure out ways to do better at measuring and showing progress. You know, Wayne Robinson was up here talking about the work that SVA is doing to prove the efficacy of education on the return on investment.
Students for Veterans of America. Sorry, just there we go.
If you don't know that one by now, come on.
Come on, I'm not sure.
And I think we need to do a better job of this. At the end of the day, the Veteran Service Organization space is a very young space. It's not like cancer research. It's not like a lot of the other nonprofit organization spaces and verticals out there that have hundreds of years of history, that have sophisticated ways of measuring their progress. This is a post-9/11 vertical. We all know that there were only, there were hundreds of organizations before 9/11, but there have been thousands of organizations that have sprung up afterward. And there is a new focus, an unprecedented focus on veterans issues now. So as a vertical in the nonprofit sector, we have to do a better job of measuring our impact. And I think that the best organizations, the ones that will survive and the ones that will continue to grow past this 5-year window, are going to be those that can prove the efficacy of their work. And that's troubling, and it's very hard. It's particularly hard in a space within an organization that has resource constraints. It's very hard to set up the systems and the programs and dedicate the man-hours to measuring output, to measuring progress. And often, people are ill-advised on what outputs they're measuring. They're measuring the wrong outputs. A lot of times, we find organizations that are measuring inputs versus the outputs on the back end. So there needs to be a sophistication of the space in order to go to an organization like the Case Foundation and make a case, no pun intended, for why an investment should be given to that organization. So there's a lot of growing in the space that needs to be done. I think at Team Rubicon, we've done a very good job over the last 2 years. We're a 4-year-old organization. We've been doing a very good job recently of measuring our impact in the disaster zone. So if we go out and deploy, we can go back to our donors and show the economic output, the economic impact of our activities in disaster zones. So for instance, in Moore, Oklahoma, a response that probably cost us, I think, on the order of $400,000 to deploy about 500 military veterans over the course of 5 weeks in response to the tornado there, we had an economic impact of $3.75 million back into that community because of the work that we did. That's something that we can go and say, hey, we have a 7x return on the investment that we put into this community. What we need to do a better job, admittedly, of doing is measuring the effect and impact that we have on veterans coming home. So we're trying to partner with organizations like IVMF, Institute for Veterans and Military Families, and some other organizations that do data well. We're a bunch of Marine sergeants at Team Rubicon. We don't understand numbers and statistics, but there are really smart people out there that do it well. We understand our need to do that so we can continue to make a case. And others in the space need to do that as well.
I want to just say, I have been in the fortunate position, not only is Disney my parent company, which has made it's not why I called on you, I couldn't see you, but has made a real commitment to veterans, not only in hiring veterans, but as ABC television has made a commitment to us covering veterans issues, which for me is fantastic. But I am also involved in the Bob Woodruff Foundation. As many of you probably know or remember, my colleague Bob Woodruff was terribly injured in Iraq in 2006. And he and his wife, Lee, have devoted their lives to helping veterans. But one of the things the Woodruff Foundation does is exactly what you're talking about, and we've worked with you as well, and that is trying to find where, first of all, you have to raise the money, and Anne-Marie Doherty is here and helps us do that, but also to do due diligence on who to give it to and who is getting results, and that is something we really do have to continue to measure. I want to also turn now, before we go again on each of these topics, to Kent Hance, who's the Chancellor of Texas Tech University System. We heard a lot about education. We heard about how some of the veterans are using the money that they get from the GI Bill. A lot of it seems to be going online. What can you do in the colleges and the college system?
You know, I think the first thing, you've got to put the resources in.
You do have that accent. I love
do.
it.
I do.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm in Texas.
My voice and my heart are in West Texas, where the highway ends and the West begins. I need a little humor in here. One of the things that if you don't put the resources in, you're not going to get a rate of return. And the Lee Iacocca one time said that the vision and the ideas at the top will be throughout the organization. I think that's General referred to that earlier. That's so important. When I got to Texas Tech, we had one person. We've got 12 now. The last 3 years, we've had a national football game. Wounded Warriors. This last year, we played Kansas State, and it was Purple Heart Night. We had more people with a Purple Heart award that was on the field than had ever been assembled in the United States. We had 326 on the field. Our head coach, Cliff Kingsbury, his dad was on the field. He was Purple Heart winner in Vietnam. Tubby Smith, our basketball coach, he was there representing his dad who got a Purple Heart in World War II. So we emphasize that. We've got 1,600 veterans and dependents at Texas Tech. You've got one place you go that we don't care what your question is. We're going to be able to help you. And that the average student that comes to Texas Tech that's a veteran, we allow, the average is 26 hours that they transfer in. Some of those they took, but a lot of them are things that they did when they were in the service. If a young person's been a medic, there's no sense in making them repeat courses if they're going to nursing school.
Oh, I've heard that problem. That's incredible, that you can be a medic and that you can come out and you can't actually get a job. You got to start all over. You have to start over.
We don't let them start all over. We let them have credit for what they've done. They've been on the field doing it. You know, it's not they've been in the classroom. And so I think that's something else. And the word gets out, when we graduate someone in the military, they have a camo stove, and we introduce them. And they get a standing ovation every year. Every year, for 7 years, I've never seen it fail. We introduce the people that have served, and we appreciate their service. We also have a training program for faculty members, and that they are certified as Green Zone, and they have a doorknob hanger that goes on their door to let the students know that that's someone that you can talk to about whatever problem, that they're military friendly, and we have a bunch of them. And so you've got to attack it in every way.
But how do you get to those colleges or universities who aren't attacking it in every way? I'm thinking of something personal here again, and a young woman I know who went to a college, you know, not in Texas, and at her graduation speech, which was in 2007, they did not, which were the years of, she started college in 2003 when the Iraq War started, and she graduated 2007, no one mentioned the war in that entire commencement speech. It was never mentioned, which to me was pretty stunning, and some friends of mine noticed that at their daughter's commencement and were concerned about that. But how do you get those colleges who aren't?
Well, one of the things I would say is the amount of money that you're going to bring in. We've got 12 faculty, 12 full-time staff members working on it now. But we've brought more money in because we had more students. They're paying tuition, the GI Bill. You know, it's been something that's positive for us. It's positive for the veterans. But I think they're missing. You know, we talk about diversity in this country. If you want diversity, go to the military. Bring veterans in. The experience. I tell my students, I still teach one course, that diversity is so important. I want them to know foreign students, but I want them to know veterans. I want them to know people that can tell them what it was like in certain areas of the world, protecting the United States. So I still come back to saying that you've got to put the resources in, you've got to be aggressive, and you've got to let people know. We had one of our 12 staff members told me a story that he bumped into a young man. The guy looked like he was lost, and he asked him if he'd help him. He said he was at Texas Tech, and he wanted to apply for admission. And he talked to him, and the reason was he had seen a football game where we honored the military veterans. And you know, when we had the Purple Hearts, we had Marcus Luttrell out, we had him come out, we had a flyover. It's a big deal. I mean, we put on a great show, and people, they leave and they're proud. And I think that's the attitude that you've got to have. We're proud of our students that are going into the military. We also introduce them separately at graduation. We'll have 4 graduation ceremonies each, you know, in May and December. And there's a lot of people there. There'll be 12 to 15,000, but they always give them a standing ovation. I mean, it's a proud moment.
I am sure it is, and I've seen many of those proud moments. They're great. Jean, I want to go back to you, and something Jake was talking about, and I was talking about with the Woodruff Foundation. How do you measure the effectiveness of some of these programs that you're interested in, that the Case Foundation is interested in?
Right. Well, if you agree that it's still somewhat early days, and I'm hesitant to say that in this environment because I think if you're a veteran and you have a need, every day probably feels like a year. So we need to bring urgency to everything that we do. But I do believe if we were to step back, we are still early days and there's a lot of opportunity to do things. But really, really good news is some of the research we saw this morning. The worst thing for me is when you come together in an initiative, whether it's public-private or just private or whatever, and you don't have the data. We saw a lot of really good data. Our foundation has funded other data. A lot of you out there participated in other studies. So we're starting to get clear data now, which is really, really great news because we know what we need to target. And then as Jake pointed out, and Wayne earlier, if we can get smarter about where the impacts are, the return on investment, we actually need to not have 46,000 organizations. We need a small number of really, really great organizations having a significant impact. And I do think each organization struggles with, well, how, and Jake hit on it, it isn't input, it isn't how many people did you necessarily serve, it's what were the outcomes of those that you set out to serve and how do you measure that? And I can tell you, I'm really impressed with what I'm already seeing in terms of a focus on return on investment for many of the organizations that we know and have worked with. And I would say even that question of how do we define impact is a great way for the private sector to come along and play a role. Because trust me, the private sector's really got it down about how do you look at return on investment. So getting pro bono support, if you're a nonprofit out there and you're saying, okay, here's our data, but what do they really need to see to know we're having impact here? So I'm encouraged in the sense that I think it's early days. I think there's a huge opportunity for what I said earlier is about a clarion call and collaboration. But where we'll really, I think, be seeing some big differences is when we know the things that are there that can be scaled. Because I think that's what the private sector is good at.
How do you scale them? When you
Sure,
say
I'll give you an example. So we had someone we knew who was a mental health counselor. She's a psychologist, and she'd been seeing families. Again, we're in the DC area, so we have a lot of military families, vets. And she was hearing time and time again, we can't get in, the system's overloaded, there's clearly a problem that more resources are needed than the system has. Whether you wanted to argue that problem or not, that's what every doctor was hearing. So she said, I just can't handle this. Every week I'm getting a call and I want to do something about it, but what can I as one person do? So she came to us really with a vision around what if we created a collaborative in the nation, and we started with a pilot. What if we created a collaborative in the nation to ask each counselor out there to give an hour a week? And she called a Give an Hour, and you heard the Lieutenant General mention this morning that he was a beneficiary of that. That was a great idea. We provided seed funding. We did some pilots. When it was clear that the outcomes were there, then we basically did sustainable funding. Now, it's a large organization that has not just 7,000 mental health workers around the nation, but just did a deal with Google for help outs, which are virtual sessions. So talk about scaling. We can go from 7,000, literally, it's unlimited in terms of the connections that can take place between those who need it and those who are willing to provide the services.
Go ahead, Jake, Joe.
Yeah, I think it's really important. With 46,000 organizations out there, we've run enough experiments. We should be able to pick winners moving forward and invest heavily in them. And if they've been diligent in building a foundation, if they've been diligent in putting together a good core team, in instilling the principles that are going to make a 4-year organization a 100-year organization, then we should have a system for identifying who those organizations are. It starts with measurement. We already talked about that. But then we need to coalesce around those organizations and help them scale. We need to talk to, Fortune 500 companies that have 58,000 stores across the world. Was it 58,000? 52,000? Sorry.
He's not so good with numbers.
Oh, that's rounding up.
I do want to add to that, though, because I think Jake's
Please jump in, whoever
his
wants
point
to jump in.
is a great one. For us, and we give in many different areas across many different nonprofits in the military sector, but it's a mile wide and an inch deep. And if we can pull that together so that we know where we're putting our dollars is having an impact, I think that's that's a big roadblock that if removed, we'd see a lot more money flow in.
Yeah, there's not a scarcity of resources, there's a fragmentation of resources. And so we need to be better and smarter about how we're investing the money that's already at the table. There could be an argument that there needs to be more money, but I think we need to be smarter and better about investing the money that we already have at the table.
Yeah.
But in a different way to say connect the dots, how do you do the collaboration of all of what you do and with the government? I mean, it's somewhat easy to say we need this, we need that, and Gene, that was a great explanation on how you do that and scale that down. But when you're talking about transitioning from government and bringing these warriors out and taking care of them.
I've seen success, though. I mean, I'm sorry, you go ahead, Mayor.
No, I think it's, leadership starts at the top, from the top. And I think it's how you make the case for veterans. So in my case, in the city, I sell it as it helps me with my workforce. I want Jacksonville, my goal as mayor is to make sure that Jacksonville, Florida, the city of Jacksonville, is the most military veteran city in America. And I always say to all the military personnel and veterans, I go on all the bases. I meet with the commanders every quarter. We have 3 bases, 2 Navy and 1 Marine. I always say to them, when you get out, I want you to make Jacksonville your home. So making a case so that we can compete globally in the marketplace. So I say to all the companies, if you want to expand your company and you want the best workforce, come to Jacksonville. We have the best skilled workforce, but I'm doing something about it. I'm partnering with the private sector. We have some great companies, not just Bank of America and Merrill Lynch, but CSX is one of the best companies in America that hire veterans. Florida Blue is one of the great companies, and they invest back into the community. And from the not-for-profit side, a good example is the Jacksonville Jaguars Foundation. I think we have one of the best, probably the best NFL owner in the country, Shad Khan, committed $1 million to the city for 5 years. And in November of 2013, I opened a Veterans Resource Reintegration Center to help veterans. City Hall is a point of entry for veterans. We do every 3rd Thursday of the month, resume writing, interviewing skills. We're hands-on. They know they can come to City Hall, and we'll make sure we leverage our resources. We get a return on investment. The private sector actually sees it. We're heavily engaged.
Jake, I want to ask you, that is a great example of what you can do and what you have done in your community for veterans, but is this a typical story?
Well, unfortunately, no. I think that there's a lot of well-meaning people out there. I think what we need to identify are people that are willing to say yes rather than no. And a lot of what I've heard today centered on the reasons why we can't do something, centered on the rules. I've come to know Lieutenant General Russell Honore over the last year. He was the commander of Task Force Katrina, the Raging Cajun. He says an interesting thing. He says rules are made for peacetime. And when it's wartime, rules are made to be broken. And we are literally in wartime right now, but this is a national emergency, right? This issue of veteran reintegration, veteran suicide, PTS, TBI, this is a national emergency with national implications. And it's time to break rules. I mean, if you know, the information sharing, or General, we were speaking backstage about how people can take government money to do research, and then that research is their intellectual property, and they aren't mandated to share that with people. Or we can't use LinkedIn during the transition assistance program because it's a private entity. I wrote my resume during my transition. I was a Marine sergeant for 4 years. When I went to transition assistance, I wrote my resume by hand on a piece of paper. I had somebody look at it for 5 minutes, and then I walked out. You know what happened to that resume? It was in a trash can.
That was your
5 minutes out.
That was your transition training.
I probably got yelled by a first sergeant for throwing in the wrong trash can, but it went into the trash can. I never saw it again. Now, I was lucky because I'd already been to college. I'd already been through resume writing workshops and all that, so I knew what I was doing. But think about that veteran that's 21, 22 years old, entered the Marine Corps from Omaha, Nebraska when he was 18 years old. He's getting out at 22. He writes his resume down
and he's
on
full
a
of
sheet
adrenaline.
of paper. And he's what?
And he's full of adrenaline.
And he's full of adrenaline. He can't wait to get out of there. What happens to that resume? Make him put it on LinkedIn. It's a ubiquitous platform that they can instantly apply for jobs from. There's nothing criminal in that.
And we've talked about education, the vocational skills, not just going to college and higher education. Vocational skills are something that our veterans need badly, right? Both of you.
Those mostly in the community colleges. And that, and it's one of the benefits that I still go back to giving people credit for what they've been doing in the military. That's very important.
Joe.
Yeah, what I was going to say is, go back to what President Bush said. We hire folks for values, and we teach them, in our situation, to be retailers. When I was in the military, many folks here, the way we trained was through SQT, Skills Qualification Test, Soldier Qualification Test. When we bring folks into our organization who come from the military and want to be entrepreneurs, owner-operators, they go through 7 weeks of training, self-paced. It can go longer than that. They have a test of 60 skills that they have to master before we turn the keys over to them. So we're not only offering them an entrepreneurial opportunity, but we're training them in a career. And I think that's critically important. And I know we've talked a lot about a lot of things today, from PTS to integration to medical issues to families, and it's all very important. But from my lens, it's pretty simple. It's about providing opportunity. These folks, guys, and I'm from Chicago, so guys means everybody, they want opportunity. They don't want handouts. Yep. They want a purpose and a mission. And if we provide jobs, the other stuff it's going to take a lot of work, but it will work itself out. I truly believe that. Yeah. So, you know, it's not only a call from me, but from many other large organizations in the United States. This is something that should be a tone from the top. We should have targets around it, and we should work to meet it. I think it's that simple.
Jean, you were trying to get in before.
Yeah, the only point I wanted to make is I want to debunk a little bit this idea that the government can't partner with companies and private sector. As I said, I've been in my role 17 years. We've led numerous public-private initiatives launched at the White House with the private sector on the same stage. And Jake, you're absolutely right. We do need to break rules, but we need to be clear in our goals and our language set and have a reason why it makes sense for certain members of the private sector to be at the table. We launched something in 2008 called Startup America. Might have been 2009. Startup America. And at that time, we had noticed that startups in the nation were declining, and we were all very concerned about it, knowing that startups are truly the secret sauce of America, and what could we do? So together with the public sector and the private sector, we linked arms with a bunch of partners. We partnered with the Kauffman Foundation in Kansas City, and at the White House with several federal agencies present, including the SBA and others, we went forward with it. Today, it's providing a terrific platform for veterans who we think are going to be unbelievable assets in the startup community. Just last weekend, Startup Weekend happened in San Diego that was purely veteran focused. So there are these initiatives, and by the way, at that launch, we asked for $1 billion in corporate resources aimed at startup organizations, and we got there in less than a year. I just think these clarion calls where you say, here's what we're about, here's what we're trying to achieve, join us, let's link arms. We've just seen a tremendous response from the private sector and a willingness from the public sector, mayors, governors, presidents, to say, yeah, it makes sense to have the private sector in part of this.
I love the words that you spoke, opportunity. They just want the opportunity, and everyone here is helping provide that. And I want to open up this panel to some questions from the audience. Lots of questions for this panel. Yes? Not that yours wasn't so great, and questions.
This isn't so much a question, but more of a comment. Do I need to stand? Does it not?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Stand up, and could you say your name and your affiliation?
I'm Valerie, and I'm here with Nick, the speaker. He's one of my friends. So.
Oh.
Okay. I wanted to just kind of expand a little bit on everything we've been talking about the whole time. My brother is a 4-year Marine. He's out now, but he had this issue we've been talking about. He applied for multiple jobs in the private sector and found every reason in the book not to hire him. And he resorted to a lot of drinking and depression, and he's been diagnosed with PTSD. I mean, he has it. He was in Okinawa for 3 years. He was.
And were the employers aware of that?
Oh yeah, they just. I mean.
And so he thinks that was the reason he wasn't
thinks
getting
that's
the
just
job?
the norm. And I mean, Bank of America was one of them. And I wish I would have mentioned that was John was here, just to bring to his attention that this is real. Like, these are real issues that are happening. And I understand that what they're doing at this level, at the top, the executive level. But the question is, how do you implement that from the executive level down to that branch? To that hiring manager.
That's a really good, let's talk about that. How, Mayor, do you want to check?
So my example I would use is, I had Secretary Shinshinsky come to Jacksonville, and we sat around the table. I brought all the CEOs in from the hospital, and we talked about it. And then I brought the CEOs from the private sector, and we got together. And part of it is, I think someone said it best earlier, that it has to start from the top with the CEO. You have to have that commitment, but you got to take the fear away. Companies and HR directors really need to know. They need to be educated. They need to be informed.
And if I could add, you know, it does start from the top, but there are people at the bottom who can talk about it, right?
Right.
I mean, I know in my own
right.
organization, I am
Absolutely.
a huge advocate for that.
Yeah.
We've got to get stories on about veterans. We've got to do this, and people listen.
Yeah, and they do. And I think the key is, at least what's working in Jacksonville, is really bringing people together and talking about the issue, not running away from it. Putting all the issues on the table is the key. Making sure the CEO and the director of HR and the managers are working together and really focus on it. So for example, I mentioned earlier that we have a job fair. The city hosts a job fair with the Jacksonville Veteran Coalition. And that job fair, you got to have a job. But there's a lot of work that go behind the scenes that Admiral Guillory and his team are working on, making sure that we inform the HR directors, educating them. But it's about leadership. It's about that commitment to provide opportunity for those veterans. It's hands-on. And I can tell you, every company in Jackson, we have over 200 companies right now signed up, large and small. We all meet, we talk. You got to be engaged. And I think one of the things to take away from this session is you can go on our website, www.coj.net/jobforvets, and literally, you don't have to be in Jacksonville to get a job. We got people coming from all around the country getting a job in Jacksonville. We're just basically, I think it's military 101. We're taking the myth out of the transition to hire a veteran. They need training and education, but at the end of the day, like I said, I'm selling it as an asset for my city to have a good skilled workforce. They provide leadership.
But it doesn't mean there aren't huge frustrations and a long way to go on this. And I go back to the comment that we all liked so much, and happens to be from our Disney rep there, yeah. But one veteran at a time. And
Martha, one point I'd make is, yeah, it is a tone at the top. It's about getting folks throughout the organization in the spot that understands the military.
And familiar with them, yeah.
And they become a catalyst. It's leaders at all levels who understand that. examples at our company, we've got several of our franchise sales managers. One of our heads there, Eric DeFrancisco, is military. He's hired several folks that are military. They're out and they can communicate with these folks in their language and bring them in. And they become our biggest advocates of selling our company to other military. And so I think you gotta, it's a tone at the top, but you gotta have folks at all levels that understand it and are committed to it.
But I want to take off on that point too. We're all talking about the marvelous veterans out there, and there are incredible veterans who want opportunity and jobs, and some of them will have challenges. And those companies have to understand that too, that sometimes someone you hire might have PTS. That person might face different things, and I'm sure you've seen that with some employees.
Sure, absolutely. Disabled veterans, I haven't come across PTS, but you know, we've got employees with depression, we've got employees with cancer. I mean, come on. So this is about what they bring, the skill set they bring, and why it's good for business.
And that we as a nation have to help.
Absolutely.
If they do have challenges, we have to find our way around that too. Another question, please. Yes.
Thank you very much. My name's Jane Horton, and I'm the proud wife of Specialist Christopher Horton. He was an Army sniper killed in Afghanistan in 2011. And I just wanted to bring into the debate a little bit about all the families that are left behind after these wars, and especially I'm here to represent the thousands of widows and widowers that have lost their main source of income. And we were married to warriors. We don't want to sit at home and cry. We don't want people to look at us and feel sorry for us, which is a lot of what we get. We want to be empowered as well. We want to take, you know, the American dream that our loved ones gave everything for, and we want to do what we can with it. So I just wanted to bring that up as well. I have many friends that they don't know what they're going to do now. They were stay-at-home moms, and now they have to find out what kind of career they're going to have. And also I wanted to throw in here with all the CEOs around, one of the big problems as well that I personally have come across that upsets me more than anything, as well as other military families, is once we lose our loved one in war, or if they're killed in action or line of duty, we still have a military ID. But AT&T or other type of retailers or organizations that will give military discounts drop us. We're no longer eligible for military discounts. And it's not the $10 off that I get on my phone bill, it's that we're being pushed out of a community and the little bit left that we have of our loved ones. So it's just something to think about, is most people don't know what to do with us because they don't deal with us often. So if you could have policies for that as well. I don't necessarily think about me, I think about the mother with the child that goes to a theme park or to a museum and they tell her, we're sorry, we don't know what that ID means, you don't get a military discount. So thank you.
Those are excellent points. Thank you. And I do want to throw that to the panel here, particularly about empowering the spouses, the family, those left behind.
Well, I was a Marine sniper, and I'm very, very sorry for your loss. I can't offer you a job. I can't promise to offer military spouses or military widows jobs, but if you want to come and serve in your husband's honor, Team Rubicon would love to have you, and we'll go kick ass after some natural disaster.
Yeah.
And 7-Eleven too.
Yeah, but I can't offer a job, and so you can come see us, and we'll figure it out. We'll work with you to figure it out.
And the mayor will help too.
Absolutely, absolutely.
In case everybody.
If you're willing to relocate, Jacksonville, right now, Admiral's here, we'll make it happen.
But thank you so much for bringing that up.
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
Such an important point, and really CEOs and everyone should listen to your second point as well. That's an issue I hadn't even heard of and was unaware of. Another question. Right there, I'm pretty good at pointing there.
Hi, I'm Charlene Stark. I'm the Executive Director of Hope for the Brave and a former intern of Congressman Ken Hance. I've seen the success. I've seen the success at Texas Tech because the proper resources were invested. I also agree with the comments that we have a sense of urgency. We've got a short window of opportunity to help these veterans make a successful transition. My question is for Jean Case. How can we engage your leadership in helping to educate other foundations and funders of the importance of focusing on this area during the next 5 to 7 years so we can make a real difference now versus spending the next 5 to 7 years trying to educate the 99% who haven't served?
So I'm in the 99%. I haven't served, but I feel grateful to be on this stage because of the 1%. And wherever I go and those that I talk to, I mention the support that we give and the strategic nature of that investment that we give to many military and veteran organizations, including IAVA, and I know Paul Rykoff is in the audience. And, you know, we talk about that, but I think what I'm going to go away from, and I think hopefully we've all listened today and we'll walk out of here maybe with some things, and the question is, what happens to the things, right? We're going to have ideas, but how do they turn into action, as President Bush said at the beginning of the day? But for me, as I've sat here, I've tried to make it clear, I still believe we can step up our game, because I think we're missing something if I'm only talking to my foundation colleagues, if I'm only talking about it, if I'm in front of an audience or, you know, using my bully pulpit. I think there's a really big idea here. And in some cases, you know, going back to the 46,000, there really are some things out there already. And I actually would love to talk to the young woman who spoke earlier, because there are some folks we can connect her with. Maybe we can get something started there. So what are the big ideas? How can we get traction? And I think it's beyond any one of us just talking. It really is there something new here that needs to be put together? That clarion call, that sense of urgency with very clear on-ramps. If you're a citizen and you want to support, if you're a company and you want to support, or you're a nonprofit or a philanthropy. I think we just have to make it clear. I think people are, it's what I said at the beginning, ready, willing, and able. And you know, the Case Foundation would be happy to engage in discussion with folks here who might want to talk about that further.
Thanks, Jane. Great points. Up there.
My name is Jeff Hensley. I'm a leadership fellow with Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, or IAVA. But I'm also the program counselor out at eQuest, Therapeutic Horsemanship, out in Wiley, Texas. And we have a veterans program, an equine program out there where we're changing lives every single day, but we don't have a big microphone. I mean, we do right now, but we don't typically, and we're not able to compete
Go
with
for
some
it.
of the nonprofits. And so I guess my question is, because I think the argument can be made that much of the heavy lifting when it comes to transitioning veterans successfully is coming at the local level with local nonprofits. Yeah. So I wonder if you all would speak to that and how we can get our voices heard.
So I can tell you, like in Jacksonville.
Ken? Yeah, I'm going to take Ken on this, please.
The first thing, you know, we have an equine program at Texas Tech, and veterans sign up for that left and right, and it's really a good program. The other thing that, on the prior question, of our 12 people that are working full-time, they give just as much attention to a dependent as they do a veteran. So we are on top of that. Equine program is great, and I appreciate your doing that.
Fair.
No, I was just going to say that we bring all the not-for-profits together every quarter. They meet with the mayor, they meet with you know, the rank and file, and I work with them because it helps me to leverage my assets and our scarce resources. So we actually meet every quarter in the city, and it's powerful. We know what we're doing. For example, one of the goals I have as mayor is to eradicate homelessness among veterans. And so how do you do that? You got to work with all the right stakeholders to make that happen. And so far, we got over 200 homeless veterans off the street, stabilized in a job, in a home, but that's working with everybody and bringing that coalition together.
One more question. Yes.
I applaud everybody's participation.
Can you just give your name and affiliation, please? Thanks.
I'm Linda Davis, and I'm currently with TAPS and serve on the board of Student Veterans of America, the Elizabeth Dole Foundation, and a few others. I was honored to work for President Bush and implement the Dole-Shalala Commission recommendations with the help of almost everybody in this room. Let's not start fresh. Let's build on the legislation, instructions, directives that are in place under the previous administration and this administration. We have things that are there to integrate care from accession to survivors. If we look at things like the recovery care plans, and if we look at things like the National Resource Directory, which can be the one single source for things like these 46,000 different services to be integrated and add to it the rating systems and the results reporting and the dissemination opportunities that you all have so keenly focused that does need to be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Not a question, but a good way to end there. I would like very quickly to just go down the row and just some final thoughts.
This is great. First of all, I appreciate President Bush in all that he's done and this institute's doing on various issues. And this is cutting edge. I appreciate the opportunity to get a chance to tell you about what we're doing. We're proud of it. And you'll see another Wounded Warrior game on national television again this year.
Thank you. Jake, quickly.
Yeah, one of the things that we often talk about with Team Rubicon and in the veteran space is that we have to continue to peel back the layers of the onion and look past jobs, look past homelessness, and look past some of these other symptomatic issues and think more abstractly about what might be at the root of the problem. And our outputs aren't jobs, our outputs aren't homes for veterans, our output is in purpose and community for those returning service members who may have lost it when they took off the uniform. And I always challenge people to think just deeper about the issue and get to that core, that sense of mission, that sense of purpose that the veteran may or may not lose when they get out. And what that really, the impact that potentially has on some of these other issues that we've been talking about, which are truly important issues.
Joe.
I would just say, I thought the conversation was awesome. I think bias towards action. We've got a lot of very influential people in this room, a lot of influential people that we all know and connect with, and letting them know the importance and what a veteran brings to an organization. And we have talked about all the skill sets, and really going out and sell that in your organizations and across others. And if we put veterans to work, I really believe we're going to get the other stuff solved. So, bias to action.
Thanks.
I just want to thank President Bush for really making this session happen. McGill and his team, I think this is exactly what America's looking for. I think this is we have an opportunity to really re-educate and inform America that veterans matter. It's not a handout, but a hand up, and they can add to the bottom line and create hope and opportunity.
So I work with MBA students at Georgetown, and I've been taking them through something which was a 90s business book that was pretty popular called Crossing the Chasm. And the idea of crossing the chasm was really written more around consumer products and sort of things consumers adopt, if you will. And it's moving people from, why do I need this? What's it all about? To, oh my gosh, I can't live without it. I have to do something here. And I think we have to cross the chasm. I feel like a broken record, but the 99% do care. I'm not sure it's entirely 99%, but it's most folks out there, no matter their sector, no matter their role. I think we have to take seriously leaving this group today. How do we cross the chasm? How do we get all of the arms linked? How do we really create a significant movement here? Because I think the appetite and the care is there. We just have to do the work, I think, of showing them the way.
Thanks to you all. The words I'm going to take away are opportunity and, Eugene Case, traction, because I think that is what this is about, traction. Everything that happened today we want to happen. We want to go forward. We want to connect all those dots. And I will add one word, and that is remember. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and we'll turn it over to Colonel Howe.